Hello and a very warm welcome to the brand new edition of Policy Watch. I'm Kriti Mishra. Today we'll take a closer look at the draft National Logistics Policy. India has unveiled a draft National Logistics Policy to create a national logistics e-marketplace. It will serve as one-stop marketplace for exporters and importers. A separate fund for startups in the logistics sector will be set up. Aim is to provide impetus to trade, enhance export competitiveness and improve India's ranking in the Logistics Performance Index between 25 and 30. And for more on this, I'm joined by Mr. Ajay, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Mr. S.K. Jindal, Chairman, Investment and Capital Markets, ASSOCHAM, Mr. Sachin Haritash, Director, Chetak Cargo Private Limited. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, all of you. Mr. Dua, let me come to you first. Logistics industry in India is pegged at $215 billion, burgeoning at the rate of 10% annually. Looking at this growth trajectory, how important is a comprehensive logistics policy for this sector?
Very important. For the very reasons which you mentioned yourself while introducing the subject, we need to get our act together to be a meaningful player in the global trade setup. Today, we see that our level of exports continues to just hover around $300 billion, something which was achieved 10 years ago or 11 years ago. We've not been able to go beyond $315 billion, which makes us a very marginal player in the global trade. One of the reasons cited is that we do not have price competitiveness, or call it cost competitiveness. And in that, the costs, our expenditure ratio on logistics is one of the major factors. At 14 to 15% of GDP being spent on logistics, vis-a-vis the average of 10%, as certain countries being much below that as well. We needed to address that. We are still an agrarian economy, but our supply chain for agriculture products is almost non-existent. It is improvised by the farmer and a bit by the wholesale trader, and it results in inefficiencies, but more than that, it results in huge wastage.
Right.
And I would say, third, that increasingly the world is now moving to e-commerce. We might be still fiddling around with our policy. We don't know whether on 1st of February, we suddenly foisted a e-commerce policy in the retail trade on a whole lot of passive, I would say, the investors here. And now that probably post-election this will be corrected. A draft has been put into the public domain only a couple of days ago.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, e-commerce is going to be the way forward. Multimodal logistics is the way forward. And you need to modernize all this setup, including the logistics portion of it, if we have to go forward in ease of doing business, if we have to go forward and create an economy which prospers by being in the global trade market, rather than merely trying to cover our import costs of our essentials and yet not be able to do it. I think for all these reasons, having a comprehensive export logistics policy extremely important. But let me, to start with, just say, not just a central government logistics policy. The draft which has been put out needs to take into account and recognize the fact that the state governments have a major role in this sector, not only last mile connectivity, but the fact of the matter is, you want to road building, it's not just national highways. You need to have the state laws in tune with which will promote logistics rather than be a drag on those.
Right.
You need to also make sure that the state governments recognize that they have a role to play in the country's exports, which I'm afraid, and I've worked in the state governments like every IS officer for as long as required or more than that. We in the state, and I worked in the industries department, I was responsible for but the perspective was it is the central government's role to boost exports. We get nothing, no credit, foreign exchange doesn't what we generate. So similarly, if we are, I'm talking of logistics to optimize not merely exports, but even making sure that the products sold within the domestic market, also the state governments have a bigger say, then I will call this a national policy. Otherwise, it is more of clearances of the central government agencies required. I'm not undermining those, but it doesn't quite make it comprehensive.
So clearly, the state governments have to be the major stakeholders in the way ahead. But you mentioned a very important point, and that is of e-commerce. Mr. Jindal, e-commerce has gained major prominence in our lives. How will this policy promote cross-regional trade on e-commerce platforms?
You see, the way they have prepared it, they have created a portal which will be shared by all the agencies, all the stakeholders involved. There are 20 ministries involved in it too. There are 40 partnering government agencies. There are 37 export promotion councils, 500 certifications, and 10,000 commodities, for example. If until now one gets lost because it was not easy to do export or import business, one gets lost on the process of putting everything together. Now from one portal you will be able to achieve a lot of it, and that will make the life easy. And until unless we make it easy, हिंदी में मैं ऐसे कहूँ तो ये ऐसे है कि देर आए दुरुस्त आए. The importance of logistic in the whole business is very, very important. But we were not focusing on it. Now the focus has started and we can do a lot. It has got tremendous potential when we discuss, when we put it together. Lot of benefit, lot of cost reduction, lot of efficiency can be increased, lot of boosting can be done in performance. So all these things are possible only when you discuss about it, you put your things together and let it happen in a systematic way. Until now, it was just like by any way you have to do it, so you have to do it. You cannot do anything else, so you are stuck into export or trading business. But until unless in for future, survival will not be possible if we don't make it efficient, if we don't make it effective and cost competitive. This is what this will do for the country as I look at, and we are rightly targeting at an index, logistic index of 25 to 30 in the world. If we are able to achieve it, we will have really something achieved. So this is right direction now. Earlier we were without direction. I have been into business for the last 45 years and I know how these things are being handled or were being handled in the last 45 years I have seen. But now there is a ray of hope that things will come and they will take a good shape, which is required for business to start and then flourish.
So cost competitiveness is a very important factor. Talking about the industry factor now, Mr. Haritash, how will this policy improve the first mile and last mile connectivity for MSMEs and particularly the small businesses?
So first, this draft policy is being awaited and a request from the transport and the logistic industry from last 30 years. So we welcome this, and this policy tried to incorporate all the stakeholders from the user side and from the supplier side. Taking your point that how does it helps the line haul business, primary transportation and the last mile transportation. Government is taking lots of initiatives in last 4 to 5 years, and this draft policy, the processes and systems which they will define under this draft policy, the procedures which will be done as a macro level will help all the small players who are very much unorganized. 90% of the industry is unorganized. Those will get a process defined with a second generation like me who wants to come, but the organized structure is not available with them. that will help the second generation to rope in to start the business, and the existing players, it will get easier for them to execute existing businesses with lower cost, as everybody is talking about how to reduce cost. So these policies and procedures will help in reducing the cost by eliminating the inefficiencies within the supply chain. Whatever the transactions we are doing now, it becomes, with the digital world, it becomes lots easier for us to do any government payments, permits, documents, en route documents are not being required. So I am very hopeful that at least the government has taken this initiative, come up with this draft, and slow and steady with the inputs of other stakeholders, others users and suppliers, it will improve, and over a period of time, on a longer run, India will achieve this performance index of a World Bank ranking. What sir is saying is absolutely right, the 25-20 also we can achieve in next 5 years.
So it is imperative for improving ease of doing business. But Mr. Dua, this policy also talks about National Logistics e-marketplace. What is going to be the structure of this e-marketplace? How would it serve as a one-stop solution for importers and exporters?
From the draft policy, it looks like it is going to be a portal in which your interaction with the central government agencies would be provided for, whether it is on issues of taxation vis-a-vis customs, whether it's in terms of railways, be it in terms of National Highways Authority, the Central Export Promotion Councils, the various agencies of the federal government involved in cross-border trade. You should be able to get those clearances, provided the system works 24 hours, 24/7, 365, and there are no glitches the way we found when the GST portal, it was made compulsory, but the capacity and the robustness of the system hadn't been put in place for the first few months, and it caused some amount of dislocation, which has come down. But I would like to see, and I come back to the point which Kriti I made earlier, that this portal, the national e-portal, is certainly a very good idea for the central government involvement. We need to have similar portals for every state, e-commerce portals for every state, created by the states, which to complete the business, you would probably have to visit the two separate portals. Clearances, support, enablement required from the state government, you hit the government of, say, Maharashtra's portal for logistics. To get the clearances of the federal government, you do that. Transactions are so many that it is impossible to have a robust system which will take care of specific clearances and specific support available in the 30 states, also being on this one. So that is something which, now that you asked this question, it just came to my mind that you'd certainly need to have it looked at that way. Second, I come back to the point, probably I'm harping on it, stability in your e-commerce policy itself.
Yes.
In the name of data protection, or where are you going to be localizing the data, you should now clearly lay down the broad parameters, what you are going to do, and then keep it stable without any alteration for a length of time. You cannot overnight change your e-commerce policies, whether it's a new issue has come up, or think about it all in advance. Look at the best practices around the world, then come up with your portals.
But sir, don't we already have a data localization policy and e-commerce policy in place?
Madam, the e-commerce policy got changed for retail on 1st of February. 2 days ago, and I believe there were major protests from companies like where Amazon is housed, where Walmart is housed. Walmart now has its skin in the game, having invested huge amount in Flipkart. That the USTR there had taken up this matter on their behalf very strongly with the Indian negotiators. The issue of localization of data, storage is something which we have included in the draft policy put out 2 days ago.
Yes.
Draft policy.
Draft policy.
Our views have yet to be taken. View on FDI, which is being demanded and which was the one portion which was amended in end January, effective 1st of February, was, and it was a very major change, that if there is an FDI in any e-commerce business, then that model cannot be inventory based. It can be only in the e-market platform. There can be investment by FDI investment, but to do actually storing your products like the way Amazon does, Flipkart does,
Yes.
etc., that not possible under the new law, which under the new FDI dispensation which came into force from 1st of February. All certainly in the name of saying domestic players should be encouraged,
Yes.
etc.
Promoted.
But certainly do things prospectively. The players who have come in, or say somebody who valued Flipkart at $18 billion, we're not talking about, a trifle amount. We're talking of how much stake they took, whether they put in 8 billion or 7, that apart. Fact of the matter is stability in country's policy. Similarly, I would hope to see that the logistic policy which we come out with does not go abrupt changes as one of the, they invited public suggestions. A major player in logistic business has suggested to the government, please keep this policy, whatever you come for 30 years. Don't change it. We would be having to make billions of dollars of investment in modern warehouses, whether robos come in there to handle it, or in the transport system, including containers. People are also saying, why not in rolling stock? Because rolling stock for the railways could be specific to the kind of goods which you move, etc. So, if you want sustained benefits, you also think of hurry, don't be in a hurry to finalize the policy, I would say. And just give you an example,
Yes.
I'm not sharing any, divulging anything which is not in the public domain. We tried to put out a new industrial policy. It took 6 or 8 months to have the draft consultation with state governments. The cabinet refused to pass it. They said, please reconsider it. The department which had put out saying we think that it needs more meat. Then we come out with a new policy. Similarly, and then let it be stable. In industrial issues also, state governments have a role to play. Industrial policy covers SMEs, which is entirely the state government.
Right.
So similarly, logistics, there are so many players. Certain, as I come back to it, the state governments have a critical role to play. Take their point of view, then get them on board in whichever way, whether through and support to a legislation, whether support commitment to a policy, and then stick to it and don't keep tweaking it day in and out and cause uncertainty.
So we need a stable policy regime.
Yes.
There's another important highlight of this draft policy, and that is of Startup Acceleration Fund. Mr. Jindal, to promote startups in the logistics sector, particularly in market aggregation, in cold chains, and also in telematics, this Startup Acceleration Fund would be set up. How do we incubate such startups?
Like other startups, this is another line, and this has also got tremendous potential because logistic and financing, for example, anything you do, financing is required. You do whatever business it may be. Similarly, logistic is required, whatever you do. So these are the backbones of business. So if we are able to find some new ideas on it, startups could transform the way we have been looking at it earlier, unorganized, informal. Now it will become formal and organized, and lot of people can be connected with it. I mean, jobs can be created. So all those things, startups can help you to formulate that these are the things which can give you efficiency. At the end of the day, cost reduction and competitiveness is the name of the game. If you are able to achieve it, everything is successful. If you are not able to achieve it, then they have no meaning whatsoever. So through startup also there is tremendous potential, like in all other sectors. I believe they can create lot of new things have happened in the recent past also. Tracking etc. was not possible earlier. Now you can track every single piece booked. Let it be a small letter even, it has a unique number and you can always track it, which is a big convenience. Otherwise you are always lost where it is. I don't know, I will receive it or I will not receive it. So all those apprehensions have gone. Now when it becomes very well formed, some new ideas from startups will also come to make it more competitive and to look at it from a different angle. It will be another thing is that it will be paperless, it will be faceless, it will be transparent. Then it becomes much more easier to work, because until and unless it is easy to receive offers and conclude business, it becomes very easy, because then you can see what is the current ongoing rate. You don't have to waste time in haggling etc. and arranging those things. So all things will be very, very clear, transparent. Life becomes much more easier and faster. The size of the business will increase, with which efficiency will still increase. So it is a sort of win-win for all, win-win for all stakeholders. For government also, they will be saving lot of money and more taxes because more business is happening. So for all stakeholders, it will be a win-win situation.
So with the size of the market, we'll
Yes,
be
it
able
will
to
grow
avail
very
economies of
quickly.
scale, of course, and this will
Yes.
foster growth of startups. But you mentioned about the unorganized sector. Mr. Haritash, 90% players in the warehouse sector, they're all unorganized.
Yes, ma'am.
The warehouses are less than 10,000 square feet in size.
Yes.
The market is fragmented. How do we organize this sector?
As your last question regarding the startups. So the startups will change the ecosystem, and there is a huge potential to make it organized, to make it competitive, and government initiative of a startup initiative in which the incubators are there. They present their cases to the professors, then they get certified, which tells that there is a technology. Now, as again what Mr. Jindal has said, just paperless, faceless, all these startups are available. Now they are waiting to unleash their potentials, and with these draft policies and what other government initiatives which are happening, the foreign investments, huge investment is awaiting to take place in transportation business. We have seen already in e-commerce, we have already seen in food deliveries, we have already seen last mile. Now next line of growth is in transportation, and many small companies, startups has already initiated it. Now the warehousing is being left untouched, but I am hopeful that within next 1 year you will see reasonable number of companies will be coming up to digitalizing the warehousing. So the initial coming 1 year, digitalization is the way forward, and digitalization in transportation will be taking up a pace, and next step would be regarding the warehousing.
So with digitization, the entire supply chain would be strengthened.
Yes.
Mr. Dua, I have last 30 seconds. You mentioned about multimodal parks. How do we develop these parks for facilitating international as well as domestic trade?
Through PPP model. Please do not try and make these through government efforts. That's my one bit. This several aspects of the logistics chain, supply chain are amenable, probably everything, to being done by the private sector, with government acting as the facilitator. Let government make things easier rather than wanting to set up these parks themselves. Railway is the biggest one, is already in the government fold.
Yes.
So let's not increase further the role of the government in this business, but please become an active enabler and make sure that the private sector is regulated to the extent needed, not over controlling it. Otherwise, you have the example of the telecom industry. When it was not regulated so much, it grew, making us life so much simpler in India, and we can be proud of it that some of the cheapest service is provided, because the government had a very soft role to play in it. But as a regulator, you can be strict, but do not become a provider.
So the government has to become an active enabler.
Absolutely.
On that note, thank you so much for your inputs. So an effective and efficient logistics ecosystem can be a key contributor to robust economic growth in the country. That's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.